A very good day to all of you. In the lesson today, we are going to talk about another topic in grammar, which is conditionals. So conditionals is a type of sentence or clause that we always use in our daily conversation. We might not know that that is conditionals, but in normal daily conversations, we must have used conditionals here and there. Another name for conditionals is if sentences. So when we say if, that is basically conditional. Conditionals comes from the word condition. So when you have a condition, if this happen, that will happen. So that is the condition. For that to happen, this must happen first. So if this happened, that would happen. So that is the condition. So that is where conditionals come from. So we also call it as if sentence. One simple example of if sentence or conditional sentence is when you say so if I were a millionaire, I would have bought the house. So this is a condition. So if I were a millionaire, so this is the condition for this to happen. If I were a millionaire, I would have bought the house. So for this to happen, you need to have this first. So this is the condition. So we call it as conditional sentence or if sentences, because we have if in the sentence. So that is one simple example. Another example would be, for example, when you say if I were you, I would go and apologize. So if I were you, I would go and apologize. So this is the condition, and this is what would happen if this happened. So this must happen first. If I were you, if I am you, or if I were you, we say in because we need to follow the correct grammar or tenses. So if I were you, I would go and apologize to that person. So that is the condition for this to happen. So conditionals or if sentences. So in this lesson, we are going to take a look at different types of conditionals. So there are different types of conditional sentences. Namely, the first one would be what we call as unreal conditionals. And then, so there are unreal conditionals in the present when you are talking about the present, or unreal conditionals in the past when you are talking about something that unreal situation that happened in the past. So if sentence in the past or if sentence in the present. Next we have so we have unreal conditionals. We also have real conditionals, and then we also have what we call as implied conditionals. In some other lessons, you might also see different the different types of conditionals with different names, like zero conditional, first, second, third, and fourth conditional. But in the lesson, we are going to say to refer to those different types of conditionals as unreal conditionals in the present, unreal conditionals in the past, and real conditionals, and also implied conditionals. So let us go into the details of the different types of the conditionals. First, we are going to talk about unreal conditionals in the present. So the first one would be unreal conditionals in the present. What about it? So when do we use this type of conditional sentence? When we speak or in writing? So unreal conditionals in the present is when we talk about when we talk about an unreal situation in the present. So unreal situation in the present. So that is why we call it as unreal conditionals in the present. So unreal situation could be a situation that you imagine to happen, or could be a hypothetical situation, something that you imagine or you suggest would happen, but it won't happen. So what would be the example of this situation? For example, when you say, if we had a time machine, we could travel to the future. So this is a situation that you imagine in the present because you talk about it in the present. So if we had a time machine, of course without s, so if we had a time machine, so that is the condition, but it is a condition that you imagine. It is hypothetical situation, but you don't have it, so it is an unreal situation. And it is conditional because if you have a time machine, so if we had a time machine, we could travel to the future, but it won't happen. So that is why it is unreal. Unreal conditional because you have if. So if we had a time machine, we could travel to the future. So this is the condition. So this is an example of unreal conditional in the present. You talk about it in the present, but it is unreal. It is hypothetical. It is a situation that you imagine. And the condition is, if you have this thing, this would happen. So this is unreal conditional in the present. What about the grammar? So when you use a conditional sentence, when you write, you'll have to make sure your grammar is also correct. So you'll have to make sure your grammar is correct. So when you use unreal conditionals in the present, your grammar would be, so this is basically the formula, if plus past tense, and then the next clause would be could or would or might plus the verb in the base form. So compare this formula with the sentence that we have here. So if we had, so make sure you use past tense, because that is the rule when you use when you talk about unreal conditional in the present. Although we talk, it is in the present time, but it is a wish that you have. So if we had a time machine, past tense, we could. So we could, or we would, or we might travel. That is the verb in the base form. So you cannot say traveled past tense or travels, although it is singular here. So it is in the base form because it follows a model. So that is the rule. Unreal conditional in the present, this is the rule. If plus the verb should be in the past tense, and then the next clause would be could, would, or might model plus verb in the base form. So let us take a look at another example of unreal conditionals in the present. So in a different situation, you could also say if I were, so past tense, in a time machine, I could travel, but you can also say I could be traveling to the future. So this is continuous because the focus is you want to tell people that you could be in the process of traveling to the future. Or you can also simply say I could travel to the future. So another example would be, for example, I would visit my grandparents if I could travel to the past. So this one, if you see, the if sentence is in the second part of the sentence as compared to this one. So if in the first part, normally you'll have a comma, but if in the second part, no need to have a comma. So you can also say, if I could travel to the past, I would visit my grandparents. So that is also correct. So you can observe this sentence to the one that we have here. So if plus past tense. So we have if plus, so this is basically the past tense. The past tense of can is could. And then we have I would visit my grandparents. So I would visit, verb in the base form, my grandparents. So that is unreal conditionals in the present. You can also ask a question using conditional. For example, when you say what if you could travel to the future? So this is a conditional question. What if you could travel to the future? If I could travel to the future, if I were in a time machine, I could travel to the future. Or if I could travel to the past, I would visit my grandparents. So those would be the answers to this kind of question. So you have a conditional question. Next, you will take a look at the next type of conditional sentences, which is still unreal conditionals, but unreal conditionals in the past. So if unreal conditionals in the present is used when we talk about unreal situation in the present, unreal conditionals in the past is used when we talk about unreal situation in the past. So that is unreal conditional in the past. And if unreal conditional in the present, this is the formula that you have. Unreal conditional in the past, the formula that you have would be if plus past perfect tense, comma, and then the models like could, would, or might, plus have, plus past tense or past participle. So you can refer to the previous videos on what past participle is. So an example of unreal conditionals in the past. If you had lived 100 years ago, you wouldn't have had proper toilet. That is one example. So if you had lived 100 years ago, you wouldn't have had proper toilet. So can you see the difference between unreal conditionals in the present and unreal conditionals in the past? Unreal conditionals in the present, you talk about it in the present. You wish it happened in the present, but it won't happen. But unreal conditional in the past, it is an unreal situation that you imagine to happen in the past. For example, if you had lived 100 years ago, of course you didn't. And then you wish you said that you wouldn't have had a proper toilet if you had lived 100 years ago. So if it is an unreal situation in the past that you talk about, the formula would be if plus past perfect tense. So you can refer to the previous video on past perfect tense. What past perfect tense is. So if plus past perfect tense, so normally with past perfect tense you have had plus past tense, and then comma, plus could, would, or might. So we have would not because it is negative, plus have, plus so wouldn't have had proper toilet, plus had as well in this situation. So if you had lived 100 years ago, you wouldn't have had proper toilet, or you wouldn't have something else. So this is a situation that happened in the past. So let us take a look at another example. If you had gotten coronavirus 100 years ago, you might have died. So if you had gotten, so this never happened, it is just an imagined situation in the past. You imagine something to happen in the past. So we have if plus past perfect tense. So this is past perfect tense. So had, get, got becomes gotten. Drive, drove becomes driven. Live become lived. So past tense or past perfect tense. So had gotten coronavirus 100 years ago, you might have something which is died. So unreal situations in the past. So make sure you follow the correct formula when you speak or you write something about unreal situation in the past. So now that we have talked about unreal conditionals in the present and unreal conditional in the past, now we are going to take a look at real conditionals. So if unreal conditional in the present is used to talk about unreal situation that happen in the present, and unreal conditional in the past to talk about unreal situation in the past, what about real conditional? So real conditional is a situation when you talk about a possibility, something that is possible to happen, or um, in the present or in the future. So real conditional is a situation that um, you refer to when you talk about a possibility, something that is possible to happen in the present or in the future. For example, so an example would be if you eat healthy diet, you will live longer. So this is a possibility in the present or in the future. So if you eat healthy diet, so we have if here, and then we have present tense. So in this situation of real conditionals, we use present tense or simple present tense, and you will live longer. So this is model or future tense. So you will live longer, and the verb after will, of course, has to be in the base form. So in this situation, the formula is if plus present tense, and then model or future tense. In the next clause. So that is the formula for real conditionals. So because it is a real situation, it is a possibility, something that is possible to happen, in this case in the future. So if you eat healthy diet, you will live longer, of course, in the future. Another example would be, for example, when you say if you are interested in her, you should call her. So if you are interested in her, so we have if plus present tense, and then we have a model, you should call her. Or you can also rearrange the order of the clause. You should call her if you are interested in her. So in this case, you don't have a comma in the middle of the sentence between the clauses. So that is real conditional. So when do we talk about real conditionals when we talk about a possibility that might happen in the future. So something that is possible to happen. Like these two examples. So you can compare the differences. So you can rewind this video and compare the differences between real conditionals, unreal conditionals in the past, and unreal conditionals in the present. Lastly, in this video, we are going to talk about implied conditionals. So what is implied conditionals? So number 4 here is implied conditionals. For example, when you say, I would love to meet my grandparents if, so this is the condition, if I had the opportunity. So in implied conditionals, normally sometimes we say we don't use the if sentence. Sometimes when we talk to people, we say, I would love to meet my grandparents. But in your mind, you knew that your grandparents either live far away or had passed away. So normally, sometimes people would just mention the first part of the sentence like this. So I would love to meet my grandparents. But the implied condition is if I had the opportunity. So this is the meaning of implied. Implied means you have it in your mind but you don't say. So it is a conditional sentence but it is not mentioned in the sentence. So I would love to meet my grandparents if I had the opportunity. Sometimes we say I'd love to meet my grandparents. Grandparents, but what the meaning that you imply is if I had the opportunity. Another example would be I would love to make more money if it is possible. So in this situation, sometimes we resorted to say I would love to make more money. In your mind, the implied meaning is if it is possible. So sometimes we don't say if it is possible, we just simply say I would love to make more money. But of course, the implied meaning in your sentence, in your conditional sentence, is if it is possible. So you hide the if clause, making it as implied conditional. So people would understand that if it is possible without you mentioning it in those particular cases. So that is all about conditional sentences or if sentences. We have talked about unreal conditionals in the present and unreal conditionals in the past, real conditionals, and also implied conditionals. So you can always refer to other notes or videos to understand more about these conditional sentences. Make sure when you are speaking about a situation that is conditional, you use the correct conditional sentences with the correct grammar. So that is all for the lesson today. I'll see you again in the next video.